Hello and namaste to all of you. Today, in our Sustainable Development audio series, we are doing Unit 8, the Regional and Global Issues. In this Unit 8, it is in this Unit 8, Regional and Global Issues, we are doing number 1, Introduction, number 2, Regional Issues, that is desertification and droughts, number 2, floods and soil erosion, number 3, rise and sea level, number 4, deforestation, and next, global issues, that is point 1, north south divide, point 2, biodiversity, point 3, climate change, and point 4, intellectual property rights. And at the last, the summary of the whole unit, regional and global issues. General instruction for a student is the same as in all audios, that is, they have to listen very carefully with clear intuition and note down 10 words from this audio number 12. Introduction. Sustainable development can be best realized by a common future or global sharing concept. This lays emphasis on the link between economic and environmental development. It is recognized that it is not possible to delink environment from economic development. Inequity in the global economy, military expenditure, and human rights abuses. Further, structural inequalities in the global economic system are also responsible for the hindrance in realizing the issue of sustainable development in totality. To make the process of sustainable development feasible and operational, it is important to establish a common focus that can integrate the outlook and efforts of various participants in development. Worldwide, realizing the diversity worldwide, such as in terms of geography, society, economics, level of science and technology, S&T, capabilities and capacities, education standards, levels, it can thus be easily appreciated that the issues to be addressed for attaining sustainable development cannot be generalized. Some or rather most of the issues need to be addressed on a regional basis first. Once this is done, the regional issues, concerns, solutions can be clubbed together and discussed for global perspective to take care of global requirements and concerns. Number 2, regional issues. The wide range of environmental challenges faced by different countries in line with their respective geographical, ecological, and climatic features makes country specific approaches indispensable. indispensable. Thus, each country must formulate its own approaches in line with its social and economic priorities, its culture values, institutions, and political structures. Many environmental problems, such as climate change and deforestation, have clear global dimensions. However, as a general rule, the impact of environmental damage is felt at the local, national, or regional level. Water shortages and contamination, soil erosion or forest, mangrove or coral reef degradation harm primarily the local communities who are directly exposed. Even the severity Even the severity of air pollution is highly variable in different areas of a single city and even more so in an entire country. According, Accordingly, most indicators of environmental conditions are primarily relevant to the local level. As a result, developing a capacity to monitor environmental conditions and the impact of degradation on people's lives within a region forms an important part in the efforts to define a country's sustainable development strategies. Some of the important region, some of the important region specific issues are discussed below. 2.1 Desertification and droughts. Desertification means land degradation in arid, semi-arid and dry subhumid areas resulting from various factors including climatic variations and human activities. It is a gradual process of loss of the vegetative cover and soil productivity, human activities and climatic variations resulting in droughts and floods are chief causes of this process. Desertification has grave natural consequences. It makes land areas flood prone, prone to salination, and results in deterioration of the quality of water, silting of rivers, etc. What is alarming is that the land's topsoil, which takes centuries to build up, if mistreated, can be washed away in a few seasons. Human activities that cause desertification are overcultivation, overgrazing, deforestation, and poor irrigation practices. The measures undertaken to prevent and restore degraded land are improved early warning system and water resource management, sustainable livestock management, seeding, agroforestry, ecosystems, afforestation and reforestation by new species and varieties with a capacity to tolerate salinity and or aridity, and human settlements. A direct cause of misuse of land is poverty, which forces people who depend on land for their livelihoods. They overexploit it for food, energy, housing, and source of income. Desertification is a worldwide problem affecting 250 million people and over 4 billion hectares of land surface of land surface. In addition, the livelihood of some 1 billion people depends on land for their needs and they are among the world's poorest. Though desertification affects Africa the most, it is not a problem confined to that region alone. One quarter of Latin America and the Caribbean is deserts. In Spain, one-fifth of the land is at the risk of becoming desert. The growing severity, the growing severity of desertification in the northern hemisphere is evident from the severe droughts in North America and southern Europe, China, and other countries. Though a global issue, desertification needs to be addressed and tackled first at the regional level. On the regional basis, the priority in combating desertification should be the implementation of preventive measures for land that is not yet degraded or slightly degraded. However, the degraded areas should not be neglected. In combating desertification and drought, the local communities, rural organizations, national governments, non governmental organizations, and regional organizations are required to work in collaboration. Programs aimed at combating these regional issues in summary should include the following. Number first is strengthening the knowledge base and developing information and monitoring systems in regions prone to desertification and drought, including the economic and social aspects of the ecosystem. Number two, combating land degradation through inter alia, intensified soil conservation, afforestation, and reforestation activities. Number three, developing and strengthening integrated developmental programs for the eradication of poverty and promotion of alternate livelihood systems in areas prone to desertification. Number four, developing comprehensive anti-desertification programs and integrating them in the development plans and national environment planning. Number 5. Developing comprehensive preparedness and drought relief schemes, including self-help arrangements for drought and designing programs to cope with environmental refugees. Number 6. Encouraging and promoting popular participation and environmental education, focusing on desertification, control, and management of the effects of drought. Governments at regional level should strengthen regional programs and international cooperation. They should establish and or develop a comprehensive desertification land degradation with a database component incorporating both socio-economic and physical parameters. This would be based on existing facilities and additional facilities such as geographical information systems where necessary. In addition, benchmarks should be set up with indicators to mark the progress in the fight for anti-desertification. Also, the regional governments should develop technical and professional skills of people engaged in monitoring and assessing the issue of desertification and drought. Promote involvement of local people, particularly women and youth, through education and awareness building. On a global plane, the issue of desertification was first discussed at the UN desertification held at Nairobi, Kenya in 1977, but due to lack of support both administratively and financially, attempts to tackle the problem was crippled. The United Nations Conference on Environment and Development (UNCED) recommended the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification (UNCCD), which was adopted in Paris in 1977. It is the first and only internationally and legally binding framework set up to address desertification issues. The convention is based on the principles of participation, decentralization, the backbone of good governance. The convention has now more than 180 countries participating, giving it a truly global reach. 2.2 Floods and soil erosion. Mountains and highlands are found in every continent. They cover about a quarter of the Earth's land surface and are home to 10% of the world's people. Another 40% live in adjacent lower waterside areas. Thus, more than half the global population is directly or indirectly dependent on mountain resources, the foremost being water for drinking and home use, irrigation, hydropower, industry, and transportation. The crops that feed the cities are raised in the valleys and flat river plains, but the fate of the value but the fate of the valleys is decided in the hills and mountains where the streams rise, where the hill slopes and ridges in the upper reaches are covered with trees. The streams flow clearly and steadily, and all is well in the valleys below. Where the trees are gone, the soil washes down the slopes to clog the streams and foul the river bottoms, thus raising the water level. When it rains in the hills, there is no soil left to hold the water, resulting in flash floods, which in turn sweep down into the valleys, resulting in rivers bursting their banks, ruining crops and lives, and wash yet more soil away to the sea. The water is wasted and the deserts spread. The degradation of mountain ecosystems, home and livelihood to millions, threatens to seriously worsen global environmental problems, including floods, landslides, and famine. While several of the world's mountain areas are in relatively good ecological shape, many face accelerating environmental and cultural decline brought on in part by government and multilateral agency policies too often founded on inadequate research. People living in the mountain areas worldwide, who are among the poorest of the poor, are extremely rich in environmental understanding. Their opinions and experiences need to be combined with scientific knowledge, together with cultural diversity, a prevailing feature of mountain life must be considered as complementary to biodiversity if sustainable mountain development is to be achieved. The widespread conflict in mountain regions, including conventional warfare, terrorism, guerrilla insurgency, and repression of minority peoples, must be tackled far more vigorously than hitherto. The management and utilization of the natural resources of mountains, especially water, must be undertaken in such way that mountain people share the benefits share the benefits. Despite the importance of reliable data, hydrometeorological networks in many countries have declined seriously in the last decades. The development of strategies, techniques, and methodologies to acquire these data at local, regional, and global scales, and the establishment of mechanisms for making these data freely available are vital. Information technology enhances the link between mathematical models and data. In this respect, remote sensing based information requires analysis and its translation into hydrological characteristics needs to be carried out. 2.3 Rise in sea level. Rise in sea level. Sea levels have fluctuated dramatically in geological geologic times. It was 2 to 6 meter above the present level during the last interglacial period 125,000 years ago, but 120 meter below present levels during the last ice age 20,000 years ago. In the last 100 years, it has increased by 10 to 15 centimeter. Sea level would rise 40 to 65 centimeter by the year 2100 due to predicted greenhouse gas induced climate warming. Such a sea level rise would threaten coastal cities, ports, and wetlands with more frequent flooding, enhanced beach erosion, saltwater encroachment into coastal streams and aquifers. However, future sea level is very difficult to predict because not enough is known about how the ice sheets in Greenland and Antarctica will react to global warming. Furthermore, local sea level is affected by many regional processes including tides, ocean currents, and geographically varying land movements. These earth motions are caused by ongoing adjustments of Earth's crust to the removal of the former ice sheets, tectonic deformation, subsidence of river deltas under sediment loads, and extraction of underground water, oil, or natural gas near the coast. A comparison of the tide gauge records and radiocarbon dated geologic data from four widely separated regions spanning a broad range of geologic settings indicate modern sea level tends to be consistently 1 to 1.8 millimeter per year higher than those derived from long-term geologic data. This result implies a recent acceleration of sea level rise relative to the last few thousand years. The nationwide impacts of sea level rise are number 1, beach erosion. Number 2, saltwater intrusion resulting in increased salinity. Number 3, floods and flood damages. Number 4, threats to coastal wetlands. Number 5, threats to agriculture. Apart from the above direct effects, there are some indirect effects of sea level rise, which sometimes may be more significant than direct effects in the future, though the consequences of sea rise are not alarming presently. The time is ripe for taking adaptive actions as the effects of sea level rise are becoming inevitable because of greenhouse gas emissions, the inertia of the oceans, and the economy's current dependence on fossil fuels. Any corrective action at this stage would be welcome. This includes decision to rebuild after a coastal disaster. Again, society can save money by preparing for sea level rise, but such preparation is impossible without reasonably reliable projections of how much the sea might rise. 2.4 Deforestation. The world's forest area has been declining for centuries, though its impact has been understood with concern that the process has accelerated to alarming proportions only in the last half of the 20th century. Since the 1960s, there has been a major change in the rate at which tropical forests are being cleared. In contrast, the area of temperate forest in developed countries grew by 0.1% in the 1980s. The Food and Agriculture Organizations FAO of the United Nations has estimated that the annual rates of deforestation in developing countries were at 15.5 million hectares for the period 1980 to 1990 and 13.7 million hectares for 1990 to 1995. The total forest area lost during the 15 year period was approximately 200 million hectares. The tragedy lies in the fact that most of these deforested lands are not suited for long term farming or grazing, and they quickly degrade once the forest has been cut and burnt. In fact, throughout the tropics, Throughout the tropics, very few of the forested lands that are left have any potential for sustainable agriculture. It is important to distinguish between the agents of deforestation and its causes. The agents are those individuals, corporations, government agencies, or development projects that clear the forest as opposed to the forces that motivate them. There are four aspects of the causes of deforestation. Number one, predisposing conditions. These conditions create an environment where deforestation can occur. They are conditions created by society, at times intentionally and at times the consequences of human activities. They are some of the systemic most difficult issues that frustrate human progress and sustainable development. Another predisposition Another predisposing condition of deforestation is poverty, particularly in rural areas. Although poverty is not a cause of deforestation, it is a condition of life that majority of people in this world must endure. While greed and power can be the motivations of some groups in society to deforest, survival and the desire to escape from poverty also drives most people towards this deforestation. Number two, direct causes. These are the most visible, easily identified, and readily associated with the agents of deforestation. They are driven by the other less visible socio-economic forces, the indirect causes. The direct causes include commercial agriculture, cattle ranching, livestock grazing, and mining and petroleum exploration. Number three, indirect causes. These include fiscal and development policies, land access, land tenure, land tenure, and market pressures. Often mentioned as causes of deforestation are the demand for forest products and the demand for other goods, mostly food, that are produced on deforested lands. Clearly, without any demand, there would be no economic reason for cutting down the trees. Under undervaluation of normal forests, forest exploitation, and plantation development in the loss of natural forests. Number four, social factors faced with political decisions about urban migration, food production, reform, employment generation, national security, economic structure, economic structural adjustment, and all the other issues that demand their attention. Unfortunately, many governments have opted to ignore deforestation. However, it must be remembered that firewood collection and logging are not direct causes of deforestation. These do produce a change in the composition of the natural forest and can increase the risk of a subsequent transition in favor of other land uses. In some, cir- in some circumstances, in some circumstances, deforestation can result when harvesting occurs under very sensitive environmental conditions or when it is very intense over a long period. In the case of tree plantations, replacing the natural forest with plantations results in a loss of natural forest area, but it does not cause deforestation because there has been no permanent change in land use. One of the lessons of the last 30 years in trying to contain deforestation is that the people who are meant to benefit from the forests must be full partners in the process of identifying and implementing solutions. Interestingly, it may be noted that in some cases deforestation can be beneficial given the right mix of social needs, economic opportunities, and environmental conditions. It can be a rational conversion from one type of land use to a more productive one. The tragedy lies in the fact that most lands that have been deforested in recent decades are not suited for long term farming or ranching, and they quickly degrade once the forest has been cut and burnt. Unlike the fertile soils of temperate latitudes, most tropical forest soils cannot sustain annual cropping. The carrying capacity of the land does not support intensive annual cropping without rapid, irreversible degradation. Similarly, intensive cattle grazing cannot be supported because grasses grown on forest soils do not have the same productivity levels as those on arable soils. The social consequences of deforestation are many, often with devastating long term impacts for indigenous communities. The arrival of civilization usually means destruction of their traditional lifestyle and breakdown of their social institutions. Individual and collective rights to the forest resource have been frequently ignored, and indigenous peoples and local communities have typically been excluded from the decisions that directly have impact upon their lives. In many cases, political decision makers knowingly permit deforestation to continue because it acts as a social and economic safety value. By giving people free access to forested lands, the pressure is taken off politicians to resolve the more politically sensitive problems that face developing countries, such as land reform, rural development, power sharing, and so on. Probably the most serious and most short sighted consequence of deforestation is the loss of biodiversity. The phrase loss of biodiversity masks the fact that the annual destruction of millions of hectares of tropical forest means the extinction of hundreds of species and varieties of plants and animals, many of which have never been catalogued scientifically. In addition, deforestation is an important contributor to global warming. The rate of deforestation can be slowed down considerably and its negative socio-economic and environmental impacts minimized. Towards this, the agriculture sector must be challenged to find appropriate solutions. Any effort to combat deforestation must be based on a complete understanding of who the agents of deforestation are and what its direct and underlying causes are. The circumstances vary from country to country and from region to region. Through improved protection and management of the remaining forests, well-targeted socio-economic development programs and policy institutional reforms, deforestation can be brought under control. While forests will continue to be lost for decades to come, it is critically important that the fight against deforestation be done in the most rational way possible. Only then will the long term benefits to humankind be favorable and the costs to be environment minimal. It is time for all peoples to renew their commitment to live in harmony with the tropical forests before they are lost forever. Next, global issues we will discuss in our audio number 13. Okay, thank you.